All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Resilient Show. A little bit different show today. We get a lot of military guys on, and we get people talking about geopolitics and all this stuff. But I got a friend on named Brian Deegan. A few of you might know Brian. If you don't, you should. He same age as me, so I just always have been a fan of Brian, and I got to meet him years back on the jiu-jitsu mats and did some jiu-jitsu together. It's probably one of his biggest claims to fame is we got to train together in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, right.
But hey, before I get started, I want to read Brian's bio and just make sure you guys know what we're about to dive into. So Brian is a legendary figure in extreme sports. He's a professional freestyle motocross rider, the founder of Metal Mulisha, and first to land a 360 in competition, which is pretty freaking cool. He's a 16-time X Game medalist, LA Supercross winner, a 6-time off-road champion. He also won the World Championship race in Crandon International Off-Road Race, which is the prestigious off-road truck racing series. Additionally, he's a successful entrepreneur, media personality. He's a husband to Marissa and a father to Hayden and Haley, which two of my sons and daughters, Hayden and Haley. I got that in common. Spelled it different though. And they both of your son and daughter have pursued in your footsteps, and we're going to talk about that today. They have been incredibly and wildly successful. So welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks. So thanks for having me. Yeah, I know we've been talking about doing a show for, I was thinking about this today. I think when you first asked me, it was at Tom's spot, the Jiu-Jitsu in Temecula.
That's right, yeah.
I think it could have been well over, I probably met you 10 years ago when I first met you.
Yeah, I think so, about 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I think that's when you first started talking to me.
Yeah, this is 10 years in the making.
10 years in the making.
It's better it happens now, though, because I didn't have a lot of people listening back then.
Yeah,
so.
Now you're got your deal dialed in, and that's not why why I chose this moment. I just thought, you know what? I'm busy with my son's Supercross racing right now. He's racing in Dallas, coming up here this weekend. And I'm like, I need to just make the time, dude. Like, Chad, you've always been cool to me. I'm like, I just got to make the time. So I booked the flight, flew here for the day. I'm like, I'm going to hang out and just, and my wife's always like, why do you always just do the same thing all the time? All you do is moto. And I'm like, yeah, but I love a lot of other things. We have a ton of the same beliefs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so I feel like, I just got to go be a part of this. And I think what you guys are doing is a good thing. And I need to be, support it.
Man, I really appreciate it. And especially taking time away from your family and your son. It's so important what he's doing right now. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. I think we're like-minded culturally, politically. We both have kind of the athlete mindset. And we're both strong Christian people and family people. So yeah, man. I think we got a ton to talk about. One is that, and one of the things I love about you, and you talked about it a little bit while we were talking earlier, you were just a small town kid that had a big dream, and but you actually made it. Yeah, which a lot of most people that have dreams, unfortunately for whatever reason, they don't pursue it or they just don't make it. It's competitive, but you made it to the pinnacle of the sport you aspired to do from small town Nebraska. Was it Nebraska?
Yeah, Nebraska. Yeah. So like Bellevue, which is, in the military terms, off at Air Force Base is there. It's a big strategic air command is there. So I grew up, with the military. My dad ran the school system there, and so he dealt with military kids coming and going all the time, and so I grew up in that school system around the military, and so it was cool, in that town but it's a very small town, and if you weren't in the military, didn't play football, you're kind of like, you're on the outs, and for me, fortunately my neighbor moved in, Steve Jarrett, and he had a dirt bike, and I played all the sports when I was younger, and all the ball sports and stuff. And my neighbor moved in, Steve, and he had a dirt bike, and he raced, he was from Europe. And I just fell in love with it. I just sat there, I was probably 9-10 years old, and sat there and just watched him. He was probably 16-17 at the time. He kind of looked like Eddie Van Halen, like long hair, jean jacket, just cool. He was cool, dude.
Ride wheelies down the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and this is in the 80s. So anyhow, it was at that time where, you know, life was a lot more loose. Like, you know, he took me to the moto track with him all the time. And like, I just begged him, hey, let me go with you. So anyway, I go watch him ride, and, you know, I begged my dad for a dirt bike. My dad was a business guy. He was like, no way, you know. And at that time was right about the time my dad and mom started having issues, and, you know, I was kind of like, my dad was like, if you're going to do this, like you have to go buy your own bike, you know? So I was like, okay. So I went and got a paper route and started figuring out, selling stuff. And I eventually made the money to go buy a dirt bike. And Steve, my neighbor, would take me riding. And I feel like, you know, the point of that story is it's just a fork in the road there. Without Steve, I wouldn't have, you know, probably ever got into dirt bikes, which is crazy. You know, I feel like
someone intersects your path and the opportunity presents itself.
And was cool enough to go, hey, kid, I'll help you, instead of like, get out of here, kid, you know? And so, and I just...
How old were you when you first got on the bike the first time?
I was probably 8 or 9 when I first started like getting into dirt bikes.
Actual riding.
Yeah. I was always athletic, always just loved, you know, in sports. And so anyhow, he took me to the races. I found this whole new culture, whole new world of motocross, all different people. And I just fell in love with it. And for me, was my ticket out of Nebraska. You know, I was like, okay, I got to start traveling. Once my dad saw that I loved it, and, you know, my parents eventually went through a divorce when I was probably like 10 or 11. My mom basically one day, and I was kind of mama's boy, you know, and cause she was home all day. And one day she just said, I'm out of here, and left, and it's gone, you know, went to Texas. She moved back to where her family was. And so for me, I was kind of like, and I had a choice to go with her or stay with my dad. And so it was the dirt bike that was like, man, if I leave, my mom family's very, you know, they're very poor, you know, her family. And I just knew that if I go, we won't be able to afford to race. And, you know, whether that's good or bad or heartfelt or not, that was the reason why my dirt bike is why I stayed at my dad's. And my dad was a, you know, hardworking business guy, a good dad. You know, led me in the right direction as far as work ethic. And so I took that dirt bike, got to travel all around and race. And he saw I loved it. So he started taking me to all the races, all the amateur nationals all over the United States. And then I got to meet all my friends from California and Florida. And anyhow, that was my way of venturing and finding my way on to the next steps in my life.
When did you like know that it was like, I'm winning, like this is something I could actually be successful at? Because at some point you have to realize you're uniquely gifted at this. You're standing out, right? Like,
so how do you find your gift? Like, what is, I mean, for me, like I try to tell people, you know, because we have a, you know, large social media following now, and I get a lot of questions and people asking, you know, like, how did you figure out you're good at dirt bikes? I'm like, well, I can promise you, I wasn't good at snowboarding. I wasn't good at skateboarding. I tried all these things, you know, like I was the one who tried every sport. And I just, dirt bikes was the one thing I just clicked with. And it was a lot of hard work, and I studied the best guys and tried to learn it. And I really became a student of the sport. And I knew I was good at it when I started winning all the local championships, all the stuff in our region. And at that point, you kind of got to move on. Once you kind of dominate your region, it's time to move on. And I was able to, which is a whole nother story, but moved to California. I was probably 14, 15 years old, jumped in my buddy's truck. This guy, Jeff Emig, who was a multi-time champion in motocross. He was 16 or 17. He picked me up, and we drove to California with my dirt bike. I mean, this is like crazy. Like, you would never let your kids do this. Like, I would never let my kids do that nowadays. But
your dad just believed in you.
Yeah. And somehow believed the world was a nice enough place to let his kid just go to California. And then I had to go to school. Like, I transferred grades and went to high school. I went to Riverside High, first day, gang fights, and like went into this like little white dude in this like gang school, you know, from Nebraska.
Going into
It was scary. Like it was such a culture shock for me. Like, going to school, I was like, oh my gosh, I only saw this stuff in like TV, you know, in the movies. And so anyhow, you had to adapt. So I started adapting to it and found my ways around how to kind of survive and thrive. And anyhow, I would go back to Nebraska after the winters, because winter is too cold there to train. So after that, I'd go to California in the winters, and the summers back home. And then that's kind of how it started, till eventually I graduated high school and moved to California full time to race professional Supercross. Yeah.
And then, I mean, we'll get into some of this, but of all the races you've won in your mind, like what was the pinnacle?
The pinnacle was Supercross. Well, when I was a young kid, I still have this biography deal. I wrote in this book. I created this book as a class project, and I wrote all my future. And it said, so I wrote it all out. I said, one day I'll live in California. I'll own a big house and a nice car with the swimming pool, and I'll win a Supercross race. And I said, I'll make lots of money. And I had all these goals, right, as a kid. And so I go down the path and ended up going to California, and ended up winning the LA Coliseum Supercross race, which was like the biggest race of the year. And at the finish line, I was so excited. I like ghost rode my bike over the finish line, which was totally illegal shit. Like
that's when you like jump off of it.
Yeah. So I basically, it was a big double jump. Like you jump from one jump to the other. It's probably 100-foot gap. And I'm winning the race, and I was so excited. I was like, because I was the underdog for sure. This kid from a small town, and so I ghost rode my bike over the finish. I went flying in the air with the bike. The bike luckily landed on the landing and like coasted and fell off to the side of the track.
Didn't hit it.
Because second, third, and fourth and fifth are still racing, over my head, and I'm just standing there. Yeah. So that moment I'll always remember. That was my first win in Supercross, and like still to this day, like that moment, like of all the things I've done through X Games and car racing and trucks, and that moment I hear the most from people when I'm just walking down the street. I was there that night. You ghost rode your bike, because it was such a rebel move. Like they tried to take the win from me. They took my prize money. The association AMA that runs the racing.
Right.
They were like, you can't do that. That was unprofessional. And for me, I'm like, what am I going to do that people will never forget? Yeah. And that's been the basis of a lot of my career, how do you leave a mark? And that's my marketing mind, I guess,
Yeah. So, that definitely stands out.
Yeah, it stands out. Still to this day. I mean, it's still to this day, it's no one's ever done it,
Yeah.
So, yeah. My son actually did it when he won his first Supercross. It was he actually won his first Supercross at the LA Coliseum, which is so crazy.
Which is where you.
What are the odds of that? Yeah. And they only had one. They only had one race. They brought the LA Coliseum back after like 10 years of not racing there, 5 or 10 years.
Right.
And my son ends up winning his first race at the same place I won my first race. And so it was set up perfectly for him to ghost ride his bike, right? So everyone's waiting for this, but the way the race went, it was like a 2-moto format. He went like 5-2 because everyone shuffled around so much in the standings. He went 5-2 for first overall. So when he went over the finish, he didn't know he won the race, right? Okay. So he came around and they're celebrating and this, and I'm like, bro, it was like the perfect moment to ghost ride your bike. So anyway, his next race where he dominated and won, he, ghost rode his bike. I think it was in Texas, actually.
Did same repercussions?
Yeah.
Or
yeah, no, he actually was smart enough to like go finish and then go. I think it was to like the next jump.
Okay.
Like, away from
safe,
the, and then ghost rode, and then all the cameras were ready for it. And it was a cool moment. Anyway, it's kind of just pay a little homage,
That's super cool. What, I mean, every sport like has its pinnacle, win a UFC championship or the Super Bowl, but it's something about individual sports when you win. I mean, you train with a team, right? But you win individually. Like, what's your mindset like when you're standing on that, the pyramid on that number one block, and like you look back at so much work, right? You started when you were 8, 9 years old. What's the
Yeah, and I think of, we did a documentary called Bloodline. It was on the story of a small town kid going against the odds and making it, coming to California, winning Supercross. And for me, there's a lot of chapters in life. And my first chapter was to be the Supercross motocross racer. And my goal was to become a factory rider, which means you ride for Yamaha, Kawasaki's, one of the big ones. And I was always like that. I was always that third to like fifth place kid where I just kept missing that mark of the factory support. And that's what drove me to doing tricks on dirt bikes. And that's when the first movies came out called Crusty Demons of Dirt, the big action sport movement. Mm-hmm. That's when action sport was just kicking off. and we started doing all these video parts in these free ride videos, and that's when it really that blew up. And I looked, and I didn't want to walk away from racing because I, had built my whole life on that. But I feel like I accomplished a few of the goals I wanted to, but I couldn't seal the factory ride I needed. I needed this certain bike to win, basically, and I just couldn't get it. And now I look back at it, I didn't have the right attitude. I was kind of a punk, and I didn't network. I didn't walk around, get to, meet the right people. I was this kid I was on the outside, looking in, and it taught me a lesson in life. It taught me like, hey, I should have crossed that barrier, introduced myself to the right people, at least tried to sell myself to the dream I wanted. Right. Instead, I feel like I sat around, I kind of waited like, why aren't they calling me? And the phone never rang. And I'm like, yeah, it taught me a lesson that, hey, sometimes you got to knock, and so for me, that's when I started doing tricks on dirt bikes, and the video things started blowing up, the video scene. And then that's when ESPN came to me. It was like, hey, how can we figure out how to turn this into a competition? That turned into X Games. In 99, San Francisco was the first X Games for freestyle motocross. That's when I looked at guys like Tony Hawk. There was Dave Mira, these big action sport icons. Right. Because they had already existed. X Games existed for like 4 or 5 years before Moto came to it. Mm-hmm. So skateboarding, BMX, all that stuff was huge. Tony Hawk had Pro Skater, Big Game just came out. So I was like, man, we're going to be on this stage. And so we got to X Games, and that's when I kind of was like walked away from racing because I had my next chapter opening, which was hard for me. And I knew it hurt my dad too, because my dad was like such, how are the races going? He was like, he invested a lot of his life into my racing also. That was a hard decision. But when I did, I made that decision, went to X Games. That's when me and my buddies had the first freestyle motocross park and all the jumps, and we kind of put a label on our guys, which was the Metal Mulisha. We thought, this is cool. It's kind of a name for me and my buddies, just to have our kind of rebel group of dirt bike guys. And
the metal from the bike, right? Metal.
Yeah, I would say it was kind of, if you think back then, we were more into like heavy metal and just that kind of vibe. That was kind of our vibe.
Well, because the whole metal Militia thing wasn't just about the jumps and the race. It was also about the lifestyle. You guys were presenting a life like kind of wild rock star lifestyle too. Yeah, it was the guys in black riding dirt bikes, rebel lifestyle, 100%. And for me, I'd lived the life of this strict racer. Didn't really drink, didn't really like party, because I wanted to. I trained hard. Trained every day, trying to win these races. And then I got a chance to go to freestyle, freestyle was just who's the craziest guy of the day? Who's going to backflip the dirt bike? Who's going to, risk getting broke off and break bones and near death experiences, and with, trying to win these events. And so that was freestyle motocross. Point with that is you could get away with more of like, we're going to party after the event. We're going to, more of this Rockstar lifestyle. And that's when things, changed and morphed into that life, which was a gnarly run. I would just say, if you think of a rock band touring the world, getting paid a lot of money to go to these big stadiums and sold out crowds, going around in these tour buses, and, literally it was like a rock star lifestyle for 10 years. And man, I just experienced a lot of crazy things, I've seen a lot of crazy things, done a lot of crazy things. And, my life's not all about the trophy on the wall. It's more about these highs and lows in life, people I've met, good people, bad people, and just learning the hard way, learning, just life. I think that's what's built who I am more than looking at my trophy medal, For sure. I got to ask, like, you're not like living a rock star lifestyle. Mm-hmm. You guys were like rock stars, especially in the circle you're in. Yeah. Was it ever like fulfilling? Like, was it fulfilling, or was it empty at the same time?
Yeah. Well, I grew up. My family was Catholic. We went to church on the weekends, and went to church, and we went to church because that was the right thing the public eye wanted to see. They wanted to see my dad was a political guy in town. Right. So we had to show up at church, and do our part. And, and I never really bought into that. Like I was always like, oh man, like never really like felt connected to that. And
like a duty, like an obligation.
Yeah. But I did have faith and I did believe in God. I just feel like I had no connection, and so that, I prayed before I, went to bed, we prayed before we eat, but I felt like it was like almost a routine ritual deal, know? And so I went, and I always had that in me though. It wasn't, I always believed, but, as far as like seeking, I wasn't there, and as I was growing up at a young age. So I go to, through racing, then a freestyle motocross and yes, we traveled the world, went to the craziest events and craziest after parties and it was just like, when you think of like, Motley Crue, probably being Motley Crue, that we're probably the dirt bike version of that. And you're young, you're seeking, right? You're seeking. You're like, I'm like, oh, we think this is fun. We think this is it. We're living what everyone thinks is the life, right. And I have to say, majority of those mornings I woke up or whatever was still awake, that I'm like, what am I doing, dude? I've had many of those to where like, I'm like, felt like, I'm like, oh man, you have that thought in your head, but you're young, you're hanging out with your buddies. And there's one thing I noticed, you when you're doing things wrong, like morally, you just know, like you have that instinct. And I feel like that to me is God. And you have that instinct, but you surround yourself with people that validate your actions. Sure. So, like what's the first thing you do when you wake up or you're in the next day, you're like, call your buddy. Hey dude, that chick last night or this party or this, you're like, you're trying to get like, hey, I feel better about myself.
Because this co-conspirator.
Co-conspirator, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, to say why, like, I've thought about, why a lot of times, why I went down these paths, why, but I feel like it was all learning lessons for me.
Sure. Yeah.
And, we were on top of the game as far as media and money and fame and but I felt like, I was on like a rinse and repeat, a lot of just doing the same thing over and over. And I was like, it just didn't feel like, I'm like, what am I did, at one point lost track of the medals and the trophies. And I remember like, at one point I couldn't even find my medals. I'm like, I didn't even know where I'm like, I stashed them somewhere in my house or they're in a drawer somewhere. I'm like,
just became that important.
Yeah. I'm like, so I'm like, what is, I'm like, so anyhow, so I started going and we were still going down this path. I met, Viva La Bam back then, the Jackass crew on MTV, and they invited us out for a show. And this was the kind of life-changing moment. We went on this rampage for years, so I met the guys from Jackass or the MTV show, Viva La Bam. It was a new show. They invited us out to do an episode, Militia meets Bam. This was kind of back in, our TV era, I guess. And so we go to their house. They have their own compound. We're riding dirt bikes. We're just screwing off, doing dumb stunts and filming for their show. And then, so they have a band playing guar. It's like a heavy metal band, and they're skateboarding. I'm supposed to backflip over this band for the final shot of this show. And it's super windy. Like the flags are flying super, like 40 mile per hour crosswinds. And I'm like, and I told the guys, I'm like, I don't know, dude, like this is sketchy. Like, I don't really want to flip in the wind like that. You can barely hit the jump. And it was like, well, we need the shot. This is what we base the show. This episode. It was just a pressure thing. And for me, I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah. Like I'm,
Guar's here.
Attempt me.
They got coming back.
Yeah.
They're not going to come back, right?
Yeah. And I just felt like it was a moment. Well, it was a learning moment later, but for me, it was a moment of like, oh, cool. Yeah. You want to challenge me? I can do it. Right. And so I go and line up, hit the ramp, backflip, and the wind's so bad. I under rotate the flip. I come in short to the landing, and the front wheel hits on top of the landing, driving the handlebars into my stomach. The curvatures of the bars go under my rib cage and explode my kidney and spleen, And that's how hard it punched me in the gut. It didn't cut my skin. It just hit that hard. Boom, it hits my stomach, I crash, and it blows up my kidney off of my artery, rips it off the artery. And I'm laying there. It felt like my stomach was on fire. It felt like I was shotgun, hit my stomach. It was just burning, you know? And so my stomach's, growing with blood bleeding inside. And it was there. I was like calling an ambulance. There's no ambulance on site. So they eventually called the ambulance. It gets there. It was a fire truck that got there first. I was like, dude, put me in the truck. Cause I was starting to fall asleep, I was starting to I couldn't stay awake. And so they put me in this smaller fire truck unit and pin it to the hospital. And we're out in the middle of some moto track in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania. And this point, it's probably about 30 to 40 minutes by this point, and I'm I just remember chewing my tongue and my lips, trying to stay awake. I'm like, dude, don't fall asleep. I'm just fighting it so bad. And my skin was starting to turn yellowish color. And I'm like, oh, dude, I'm just I can't believe I'm going to die like this way, and I was just thinking about, at this point, I was married to Marisa, had Haley, my first kid, which she was probably 3 or 4 at the time. And so, I'm on my way to the hospital. They get me into the emergency room, and there's doctors waiting because they called ahead. So they're like, hey, they check my pulse, very light pulse, and they said, we're gonna go in, and they running me into surgery, and they said, we're gonna go in and see what's going on. And I just remember this doctor. It was I just remember this Indian doctor with a mask, looking over me and saying, he's like, we're going to go in and see something's bleeding inside. He's like, we're going to see. He's like, I don't know what's going on. And he's like, we'll try to find it. And he said, is there anything you want to tell your family? He's like, and I was like, dude, crazy. That hit me.
You might not wake up.
Yeah. He's dead serious. He's like, what do you want to tell your family? And I was like, oh man, I was like, just tell them I love them. I was like, I wasn't ready for that,
Right.
But I was, looking death in the eye because I was barely awake. And I just remember praying at that moment, going, please God, if you're real, I just want to live. I just want to live. I'll change my ways. And like I said, I always knew God existed and was in me, but I never sought him out, for a reason. I was on this lifestyle that I didn't want to feel guilt. And that's just my weird way of justifying. So I was praying. I just started praying. I said, "Please God, let me live." And the next thing I know, moon mask on, went to sleep, and I wake up. At this point, they call Marisa and say, "Hey, you need to get out from California to the East Coast. Your husband might not make it." And she called my dad and was like, "Hey, we need to go. This is serious." And so they flew to Pennsylvania to the hospital. And by the time I woke up from surgery, they were in the hospital room. So I was in surgery, they said, for 12 hours. It was a long surgery because of all the damage. And I woke up and had tubes everywhere coming out. Looked down, zipper, the zipper down my stomach. And I'm like, thank you. Thank God I'm alive.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing I could think. I'm like, yes. Yeah. Yes. And you come out of anesthesia, you're already kind of hard to kind of figure out what's going on. So when I first woke up, I'm like, all right, where am I? What's going on? And I just yes, I was so happy, and at that point I was like, okay, you made this commitment. And my wife was with me. She got really sick. We were in the hospital for weeks, and she got really sick. And so she ended up taking a pregnancy test and found out she was pregnant with Hayden in the hospital, which was crazy. I'm like, okay, now, what if, right? Yeah. What if, so you're like, what if I would have died? What if, Hayden would have never had a dad, or at least, me as a dad, right? So, it's just all these thoughts. And I'm like, man, this all, to my mind, happened for a reason. I'm like, this all happened for a reason. And I eventually get out of the hospital, and get home, which is a long story. They were trying to keep me in the hospital, and I was like, dude, I got to get out of here. I've been here for 2-3 weeks at this point. I called the cab and literally rolled myself down to the front desk and got in a cab, and because they're like, no, you can't leave. I'm like, I've been here too long. I got to go home. And so I go to the airport in my gown. I look like death, cause I'm just doing, and I remember getting on the plane, and it was me and my wife, and cause the doctor said, don't leave. You may get in the air, and this inside may start bleeding. If it does, there's a chance you may not make it down in time before you start bleeding out. And that's what they told me, why they weren't letting me leave. And I was like, I was like, I've been there so long, I got to go. And this hospital was pretty bad, like as far as just the quality of this hospital. And I'm like, I'm out here. So I remember getting on the plane and they weren't going to let me on the plane. They're like, what happened to you? And I'm like, I was in a dirt bike crash. I'm fine. I'm good. I just need to get home. And they eventually just let me get on because we got a first class ticket. And I just sat in there. I was like, all right. And I remember we start flying and the plane gets into crazy turbulence. Boom, bam. I'm like, oh my God. I just remember it was the longest flight home. And I finally got home and I was just so happy. Like I would go, okay, it's a new life. And I got back and of course all my friends start calling and everyone's like, hey dude, this event, we're going to this, that. And I'm like, nah, dude, like I'm done. Like I change. I have to change. I have to. And that was probably the hardest decision was, clipping off the bad friends. It was a hard one. That was a hard decision. But I think what put me through that is, say you go to a man and you say, I can give you everything you want, the money, the partying, everything you want, this, that. But you have to, give up, your relationship with, this and this. Like at that point, like, my wife and my kid, they were like ready to leave, they were done. They were like, we're not hanging out. If you're gonna continue to be an idiot, we're done. So I was at that point, and I was like ready to lose everything over what? I was like, over what?
It's another fork in the road for you.
Another fork in the road. And it took literally almost dying for me to go, okay, I'm done. And that was my change of like, cutting off all the bad stuff and really getting focused on seeking God, seeking family, seeking how to be a husband, how to be a dad. Yeah. Because I didn't know. Like, I was just trying to have fun and just, I don't know, live this certain lifestyle. And it was, I had a fork in the road for sure.
Well, this show is the Resilient Show, and we talk about, I do a lot of speaking on bases and stuff like that on resiliency. And the topic that we talk about in resiliency is these 4 pillars, mind, body, social, and spirit, right? So in order to be resilient for whatever life's going to throw at you, you have to be strong mentally, physically you have to be healthy, socially you have to surround yourself with the right people, and you have to have a strong spiritual foundation. And, obviously your mind was maybe not in the right place, but you're mentally tough, dude, disciplined for the things you want to be disciplined in. You're super healthy and an athlete. But, the 2 things that are missing were your social circle was not the right one and the healthiest one and certainly the spiritual foundation. So it sounds like, from what we talk about in resiliency and the efforts we do at Mighty Oaks and on this show, it's like that kind of all came together in that moment for you.
Yeah, it did. And I feel like without the foundation of, without the foundation of Christ, like in my life, I don't think I could have like held it together. I just don't like, and I was still seeking that. I was still new to that. And it had been around me and my wife and her family's very Christian.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, did you introduce that to her or she was already there? And
she was there.
You had to meet her there.
She was there. Yeah. And she just like, I'm surprised she even hung out as long as she did. Yeah. She toughed out a lot of bullshit. Yeah. She did. She just did, and I'm like, and I'm thankful for that, and her family was, when I say, I don't know how you say very, hardcore Christian, but like very involved, Christian family. And I always saw that. I'm like, why do they always forgive me? Because I screwed up so much. And I'm like, they were always welcoming. They were never like, hey, get out of here, dude. Like, and I put them through hell too. There was times where, I for surely did. And I'm like, why do they always forgive me? Like, and I was intrigued by that. So I was attracted to that. And that's when I, started seeking more. And after that near death moment, I got it. I think I got at that point, got in the men's study and started seeking more. And then that was the foundation I needed.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask. Like, I mean, that's steps, right? Like you have to, I'm sure you had to have a conversation with your wife. Hey, I'm going to make this change. And then find either a church home or a group or people to disciple you and mentor you, because it's a big decision. Yeah. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, and I feel like finding your local spot where your community, which is going to be your church, is your first big step. And we were at Harvest in California, which was Greg Laurie.
Yeah.
And Maurice's uncle was a pastor there, so that was our first kind of step in. But it's a mega church, right? It's massive.
You could hide there if you wanted to.
Hide there, yeah. So that was my first step in, and then after that, we got into Sandals Church, which is a little smaller church in California, which I really enjoyed there in that community. But that's where we really started thriving, and that's when I got in a men's study. And my wife's more, she was never like, here's what you're going to do. She was like, show me, like, you're the man, go show me that you're going to do it. Like, so she was really good at that, like, letting me prove it instead of her trying to and
have your journey with it too, right?
Yeah.
Because
you have to, yeah.
How difficult was it, man? I couldn't imagine the pressure, because this didn't happen when you were a has-been. This is when you're still the guy, right? So there's tons of temptation, the social circle you had, people lifting you up, accolading you, enabling you. You could behave however you wanted probably, and people would have just lifted you up and justified your behavior. So that had to be a temptation to pull out of that.
Oh, big time.
Tremendous amount of discipline for you.
Oh, big time. And I once I made that decision, my walk went on waves, I wasn't just I'm gung-ho though. No, there was definitely moments where I was falling the other way and had to rely on my brothers at the church and people that fortunately my best friend Ronnie Feist was a freestyle motocross guy, was he was my sidekick in all the trouble, right?
Okay.
And so I started going to church, and he could tell he was somewhat kind of interested in it, and I brought him with me one day, and he he's got a Bible, or I think I got him a Bible for Christmas or something, and he ended up started reading the Bible and went right in, went okay, boom, became born again Christian, and then he was my guy.
That's
then
super cool. You had a counterpart to a teammate to do that with.
Yeah, it helped because then I could. I think every man needs that person they can call and tell them anything, and they're not going to repeat it. They're not going to go tell anyone.
Super transparent,
yes. Yeah, I've been, today I was thinking about this, or I was doing this, and they'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, I've been there, hey, you just sometimes you just, as a guy, need that avenue, right? Otherwise it just builds up in you, and you start thinking, okay, is that normal? Is that not normal? Is it, sometimes you just need to get stuff off your chest.
Yeah.
And I fortunately have that guy, that I can do, and deal with, usually you got pastors at the church. Is no one's ever like your buddy you grew up with, or someone that knows everything about you.
Yeah. I speak at a lot of men's conferences. I talk about that. It's super important to have that, one or two men in your life that you could tell, the darkest things that and just have full vulnerability and transparency with, because not you're alone, you're isolated, and then you'll act on those things.
Yep.
If you don't have someone to talk it out. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And I feel like that, I mean, I don't know. How would you say, say if you're well, I don't have that guy, what do you do at that point? Right.
What I say is seek it like oxygen.
Yeah. Okay.
Because literally without oxygen, you're going to die. How if you were drowning, how desperate would you fight for one breath of air?
Yeah.
Without a man and another man, for men to have these two men in your life, you're going to mess up. You're going to die. So you seek it like oxygen. So find that friend, and it's available. People feel like they're alone and they can never find that, but usually when you're alone, you feel that way. To me, I believe that that's a result of people isolating themselves.
Yeah.
And I believe if you pray for it, ask God for it. Hey, I need this person in my life, and start doing what you were talking about earlier, exposing yourself to community, knocking, going out, getting involved in places. And I think that man will come along in your life. If you don't have them already, they might be right there in front of you. You just haven't opened yourself up to them.
Yeah.
But man, it's to me, as a man who's fell a lot in my life and continues to fall, I know I have to have that in my life.
Yeah.
Because I don't trust myself alone. I know what I'm capable of. I know the wretched person I am. So I think if anybody, those familiar with the Bible, Saul, who was persecuted Christians and murdered people and murdered Christians and tore kids away from families, like became Paul. And but said that he was always one stupid decision away from being Saul again. Like he needed to have brothers around him. To keep him from that.
They said the temptation as a man, it's I think you have to understand it's a natural. Temptation will come to you all day, all the time, and I get tempted all the time.
North
Honestly,
Coast Church in I mean, after you're reading Brian Deegan, man, you're like still a rock star.
The temptation comes, and trust me, I'm still a guy. I still have like my instincts and urges as a man, right?
Sure.
Like you still do. You just learn how to have to control those, and or having someone that can to vent to. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things for me as dealing with, the anxieties of life, which I do. There's moments you'd think, oh, I'm this guy can get up in front of a crowd of 60,000 people and, do these dirt bike tricks or do, or sit and I can, talk to crowds of thousands of people and you're just like, but yeah, I still deal with the anxieties. I still get nervous. I still have the normal feelings that, that guys have all the time, So, for me, I feel like it's like you're saying, it's being able to have a community and having the more you say no to things is the easier it becomes, I feel, and, I mean, it's hard because nowadays you have your phones. And that's a battle in raising kids. Like my kids didn't have cell phones till they're probably 14, 15, I would say. My wife fought, because of her, she fought that hard, and they didn't have access to social media till they were 16, 17, because I was just like, why? Like, why? And I get it. Social media to me, it's a business. It's a business.
It's a tool for your business,
It's a tool. So, but the problem is along this business deal where you're promoting your brands and your companies and yourself as a brand, you get all this stuff thrown at you, right? Doom, and I think of my kids, like the battles, my battles, with the social media and the phones. It's a different game now.
When are you gonna allow them to be exposed to that, and are they gonna be prepared to deal with it?
It's crazy, man. My son Hudson's 14, and he's seen everything by now. For me, like I don't know, the first time I saw like something bad, like say a Playboy mag or something like that I was probably, and I had to like almost seek it, right? It was like, it wasn't like, oh, I'm looking at a dirt bike video. Oh, boom, some chick pops up on my phone, that wasn't the case. Like, you kind of had to seek it out back when I was growing up, which made it more difficult.
There's an algorithm that's going to find you. I mean, I like put on my phone, like they'll have these like chicks dancing with bikini tops and stuff like that. And I'll click like spam or like, don't show me this. And they still keep coming.
Keep coming.
They keep coming.
It keeps coming. Yeah. And that's a bad thing is with even Hudson, like we have the parental protections on his phone and this, that, and he still gets like the porn spam and this, that. I'm like, how can this happen? Like, how can you bust me for like liking a Donald Trump post, but you can't see the porn spam coming to my kid's account? Like,
it's
right?
It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and he's a potential customer.
He's a customer, yeah. So my point is, it's a tougher time to there's more battles now, so you got to be even stronger,
And then even outside of that, right? You have the person-to-person temptation, right? Like, you get some good-looking kids that are super successful, especially the boys. They're gonna, these young girls are gonna throw themselves at them. I couldn't imagine where where Hayden's at right now. He's like. He does the stuff he's battling, and
so 100%. And I feel like trying to be like, so how do you do that as a father? And my wife's more of the stance of like, no dating till you're 30, right? That's which I'm like, and I'm more like, hey, dude, just make good decisions. I go, these are the good things about it. These are the bad things. And I want you to be able to talk to me about it, even though I know you're not going to talk to me about everything. But I want you to feel like you can tell me whatever you want to tell me, And I didn't have that relationship with my parents. Like still don't to this day. Like I still don't, like, me and my dad have a conversation, more of a business conversation, when we still talk to this day. It's, and it's not like, I don't talk about my personal business and stuff, but I want that with my kids.
I'm super proud that Smith & Wesson Firearms is a supporter of this show. I have been shooting Smith & Wesson Firearms since I was a kid. This is one of America's most patriotic companies that has been around 170 years. The Resilient Show is honored to partner with Smith & Wesson. I personally use Smith & Wesson Firearms every day for my everyday carry. I keep Smith & Wesson Firearms in my home for my home defense. When I'm out on the range practicing, it is a Smith & Wesson at the end of my grip. So check them out, and I hope you join me in carrying one of America's most iconic firearms.
Yeah. You know, I want to have that open relationship with your kids. And the fine line is, though, when do you be a parent and when do you be a friend? And that's the hardest thing, you know, and that's the battle of like which one are, you know,
because you want to have friendship with your kids.
You got it. Yeah. And you have to have a friendship with your kids.
But it's got balance. You know, I was thinking as you're talking about opportunity and success, creating opportunity for making mistakes and making bad choices. You know where North Coast Church is? In Southern California. It's a big church in Southern California. There's a pastor named Chris Brown, really cool guy. And he was one of my advisory board for Mighty Oaks when it first started. Man, when Mighty Oaks was growing, it was like I was doing these amazing things, and I'm watching it grow. And every time I do something, I'd send that advisory board like, you never believe what just happened. Like we just got, you know, this donation, or we just had like, I just got to speak to, you know, 30,000 people, or, you know, I'd send all these things. And people were like, there's a lot of people in the advisory board like, that's awesome. You amazing. God is great. Like, and he was never that way. And I remember one thing he said specifically was like, I wrote this accolade to him, and he said, yeah, that's really cool, but always remember you're one stupid mistake away from losing everything. And and it's you know, so true. Like you know, you can make all these changes and all these successes, but we're still capable of just ruining everything at one moment.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, like you're saying, but it takes a lifetime to build up, which you can destroy and you know, in a moment, you know, with one bad decision. But I also feel like that's why there is forgiveness, you know, there is, right?
Yeah, we're always going to stumble, right?
You're always going to stumble, and having, you know, I feel like that relationship with, you know, where you can, you know, pray and have that relationship with God and Christ, and, you know, having that, you know, someone to turn to which I think has been important for me.
Yeah. I want to talk more about your kids, but I don't want to go too far off of because there's a couple of more things about your racing career I want to ask about. One is, what was it like to hit that first 360? Like, did you train up for it? Did you?
Yeah. So that was a big moment. Yeah. I was saying that 360, that was a big moment, but I was always in a battle with Travis Pastrana, which is he was another icon of the sport. Right. You know, he was a little younger than me. So he would always come up with these crazy tricks because he had like a foam pit. And, you know, for me, when I first started backflip on a dirt bike, there was no foam pits. We had to learn it on dirt. So you just kind of, one day you said, okay, I got to figure out how I'm going to hang on to this dirt bike and gas it off this ramp and look back and not let go of this bike and hang on all the way around and land this thing. And for me, that was one of the biggest like challenges I've ever had in sport, was committing to it, because I tried it multiple times, and every time I get upside down, I'd just throw it, like, get away from the bike.
Instinct, right?
Didn't trust it.
Yeah.
And so I ended up getting hurt quite a few times trying to learn it. Eventually, one day I remember I just committed, hung on, and ended up landing it. And then I said, okay. So I just kept repeating, and then got more comfortable with it. Still to this day, it defies the odds of what's even right, you know, backflipping dirt bikes. It's not probably the safest thing. But so the point with like the 360 and X Games, like every year, if you want to win X Games gold, you have to come with a new trick. That's just the rules, like, you know, the unspoken rule. So I come to X Games, the Staples Center, I think it was about 2003, and I didn't really have something new. And we just started introducing foam pits at the time, which was a big, you know, game changer in the sport because it's much safer and a lot less injuries. I mean, we created the sport with nothing. So there's a lot of broken bones. Like I broke a lot of bones, like trying to learn stuff. And so we had, Travis Pastrana was doing some stuff, and I saw on the internet, and this is, he was doing like some tricks in this foam pit. I saw him doing something that looked like a 360 deal. And I'm like, man, that looks cool. So I did my version, basically went in the foam pit and was trying to figure out how to do a 360, and I got it I got it pretty close in the foam pit, but foam pit doesn't really count. It's just the foam pit.
Right.
So, and literally
you're not landing and riding it up.
You're not landing right away. Like you can do whatever you want in a foam pit, but it, like in the theory of action sports, it doesn't count. It's just foam pit tricks, you know, like it's like a dream, you know, you're dreaming basically until you land it on dirt in competition. It's not official. So this was like a couple days before X Games when I just started doing this and trying to figure it out. Like literally X Games was like in a few days. And that's when I like kind of saw him doing some different stuff. And I said, well, I need to figure out some different stuff. So I figured out the 360 in the foam pit. I went to the X Games in LA. And I remember we were doing our freestyle runs. Like a run was 2 minutes long, multiple tricks. And I did my run. It was okay, but I knew it wasn't enough to win. And I just kind of had that feeling like, dude, I have to do this 360. And I'm like, man, and in my mentality, that was my thought process before I dropped in. When I say drop in, you're at the top of the roll in, the whole crowd, there's 50,000 people in the stadium. And they're like, okay, Brian Deegan, you're live now on TV, go. And so you go down the ramp and you start your run. And I always had, you know, that moment was always so nerve wracking, like sitting up there, like going, man, in a few minutes, I'm either going to be stoked with a medal or I'm going to be in the ambulance. And that was kind of just the way it went. Yeah. And so I take off and doing my run. And I knew my run was decent. I probably did 6 or 8 tricks throughout my run. And then I was the time was running out and I was like, man, if I'm going to win, I have to try this trick. And I was nervous because I'm like, there's a good chance I'm going to crash.
And you never landed it.
I never landed this thing to dirt. No. And I was like, last time I tried this, I was in the foam pit, like kind of getting close, you know? And so, but, you know, I was young and you feel like in my mind, the mentality was there's an ambulance here. There's an ambulance, there's medics here, which is better than my backyard. You know, there's no medics there usually when I'm doing stuff. And so I'm justifying it and I'm on live TV. Worst case, I have a big crash on TV. It's going to be cool either way. So I come around the corner. I'm like, all right, I'm going for it. I just remember I was so nervous. I was like, my heart was racing and I come up this really steep ramp and I go up the ramp and I just like look over my shoulder. Like I just said, if I'm doing this, I'm going all the way. I'm not going to have to. I'm doing it like I think I know how to do it. Yeah. I'm committing. Yeah. Boom, go off the ramp, look over my shoulder, my left shoulder, and just start spinning. And I just remember I was like, the bike got super like flat. And I just remember looking, you could just see the crowd, right? And it was like silent. And I'm like, and I'm like, come around and then I'm spinning and then I look, I see the landing. I'm like, okay, I see it. Boom, I come down the landing. I was under rotated. So like say the landing, I needed to land. I was kind of like coming in. I was like probably about a 270, 300, you know, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to slap down so bad. And my rear wheel went off the edge of the landing and basically 50-50 the landing, which means, you know, one wheel off the landing, one wheel on, and I slid my frame down the edge of the landing. Like, so, you know, I got super lucky that I landed on the edge of the landing. And I slid down. At that point, I just like muscled it and just hung onto the bike. I was like, and slid down the landing and rode out of it. And I was like, it was just a moment that was like, defied all odds. I thought it was a 50-50, but I was like, this is all or nothing. Boom, landed it. And I just remember it was one of the coolest feelings of accomplishment for me of conquering fear. That I was like, and then the crowd just boom went crazy, right? Because it was no one's ever seen nothing like that. And I think people expected Travis to be the one to do it, you know. And so I just remember stop and take my helmet off and like to the crowd, stand in front of the crowd, just like so stoked to accomplish that. Throw my hands up, the crowd just, you know, it was one of those moments in sport that I was just like, was the ultimate moment. And then I just remember Travis went after me. His run was after mine. And he went and did his run, which was a really good run, and did all his tricks. And he went to the same jump and tried to do the 360 because he felt like he had to do it.
Sure,
now.
Yeah, now he has to.
And you know, talking to him later, he was like, I was so bummed that you landed that thing. Because he's like, I had to do it. And he's like, I didn't think I could land it either. And so he comes around, boom, does a 360 and does exactly what I thought I was going to do. He under rotates, boom, falls off the back of the bike, crashes. And so I'm like, cool, I won the event, you know? Yeah. And then it basically, there's politics and everything. So the judging, they said, oh, stop. And he basically like called the timeout, was like, stop, timeout. And so he ends up going back around and jumping the jump and actually landing a 360, and they give him the win, you know? And I was like, it was so spoof for TV. Yeah. I'm like, bro, that was kind of a moment where I was like,
you did it first, you should have got it.
Yes, I was kind of one of those moments. I was like a big slap in the face, but I'm like, you know what? It was, I did it first. Yeah. I'm in the community of our community, you know, I got to claim it, and it was, you know, my trick at that point, which was for me, I thought was cool. And
well, you medaled 16 times.
Yeah. And then, right? And then the next night was best trick in the Staples Arena. The freestyle motocross is multiple jumps, a lot of different ramps. You get 2-minute run. Best trick was the event I loved because it was one big trick, all or nothing. Who's got the biggest balls? How's this? You know, who's going to throw it down? Right. You know, tonight. And that was inside the Staples Center, and you go down this big drop-in ramp to one big jump. And that night I was like, dude, I have to do this 360. And I ended up coming down the ramp, boom, land the 360, end up winning the gold medal that, you know, for the best trick competition, which for me, that was my specialty, was best trick. I always liked the one big trick. And that's the event I'd, you know, medaled or won many times. And so it was cool. That was a cool moment.
You talked about something that I feel like I could relate to, but not in the same level, because I couldn't imagine the pressure of getting on that bike, like doing something that nuts. But walking out for MMA fights, like everyone watching, you know, the thousands of people watching on TV, and everyone like that walk is such an emotional roller coaster. You're in the back locker room, you watching, you know, towards the end, my fights were always at the end, you know, main event, co-main event. And I just remember like as fights would like end, you know, yours is coming, that you can't stop the clock, your time's coming, and just being able to control your emotions. And then the commission comes get you, and you start walking out, and then you make that walk to that cage, the doors close, and the referees stand in front, one other guy in there, and they're like, you know, fight, like all the like mental composure you have to after that moment to perform. Like, how did you control your emotions and keep that composure? Because you have to keep your composure, right?
Yeah, and I agree. And like bringing that up, that was for me the most exciting. When I was younger, I was so excited. I was just like, I couldn't wait. Like I was building with anticipation, and I would, you know, felt like I lived for those moments. Yeah. And then there came a point where I started getting hurt a lot, breaking a lot of bones, and I started getting nightmares of the moment, and I started having these weird dreams. I started like where I'd have nightmares of sitting on the roll in, like getting ready to drop in.
The pressure of it.
And and the big crash. And I'd always started having these crazy thoughts about it. And that's when I started going like, you know, started riding in fear. And I was getting older, and I was like, that's when I was like, man, I got to get out of this sport. I have to move on. This is like, I'm starting to get, you know, too scared, or too much. The fear is beating me now where it used to not, right? You know? And so so, you know, explaining that answer, yes, I used to love that moment, like the excitement, the build up, the preparation. I'm ready. Like, this is going to be such a cool moment, to where it started eating at me, to where I was like, started fearing the moment and not wanting to be at that moment. Yeah. And that's when I remember talking to Marisa. I'm like, I just don't think I'm like mentally there anymore to do this. Like, I don't think my fears, I have more fear than fun at this point.
How old were you at that when you?
I was probably almost 30. Okay. You know, I was late 20s at that point.
Banged up pretty bad.
Banged up, a lot of broken bones, walking with a limp, and like, you know, I just like
more aware of what could happen.
Yes, and you know, I had that point had Haley and Hayden. You know, I had kids, and like, so at that point your priorities change. Yeah. And at that point you're kind of like, man, I want to be able to play with my kids. You know, like I want to be able to still run and play ball and go ride, do these sports with my kids too. It just becomes at some point I felt like I was being selfish. I was like, what am I still fighting for this moment, you know? And I'm smart. I know how to do business. I've built businesses. I don't need to do this. So
let's just say, because you were like bivocationally an entrepreneur at that point. You wasn't just racing, and you were already had Metal Mulisha. What was your involvement with Nitro Circus?
So I created Militia we created the Militia company in the late 90s. that started snowballing. About 2004 or 5 is when it really blew up. It's when we signed a license with La Jolla, which is a big distribution company. That's when it went into all the malls and all the stores. It became a massive brand, massive movement. And so that was I love business. I love marketing. And that fulfilled that need. And so along the way, I'm like, I don't have to ride this dirt bike, but I'm still doing it because I love the feeling of the attention. Yeah. And I'm like, and at some point I'm like, is the attention really worth like risking not being able to give my kids a cool life? Like as far as a cool life, not money, but being there for them. Sure. And being able to like go ride with them and go do things with them. And in my mind, that's what my thoughts were. And so that's when I started feeling like I'm being selfish here. I need to kind of find a different path. Yeah. But I'd built all these partnerships and, with Monster and all these business partnerships I've had forever. And because I was the first athlete at Monster before it was Monster. It was Hanson's Energy, and then it became Monster. So anyway, I'm like, I can't just walk away from sport, So I'm like, what do I do next? And that's when I saw Travis Pastrana brought rally cars into X Games. And I'm like, I think I could do that. So I got in a car and started trying to figure it out. And my first step was into off-road truck racing because the energy drink companies supported that series. And they gave me
Monster energy drink?
Yeah, Monster, Rockstar, they all supported that series. So that was my avenue into four wheels and car racing. That was my mind. Okay, this is how I'm going to parlay and make my next chapter, which I did. I took it super serious, studied it. Within a year, I was winning races, winning championships in four wheels. And I was able to carry all my sponsorships over. I built a relationship with Ford Motors. And throughout that, which I was able to, pass down to Haley for her NASCAR racing.
So you got your manufacturing sponsor.
So I got my, yes. Yeah.
You eventually got it. Yeah.
Yes. And I thought that many times.
Checked the list.
Yes. Yeah. I got my manufacturing deal. And so did my kid, right? Yeah. So Hayden, became this top factory racer, which was cool. For me, that was some closure.
So when Hayden get the factory racing from?
So he got sponsored by Factory KTM from a young age because he was this phenom racing kid who won all these amateur races. Then he turned pro, and a lot of people were like, he'll never beat these top pro guys. He's just an amateur phenom. And that's when we ended up doing a deal with Star Yamaha Racing. That's why I ended up moving to Florida, Tallahassee, Florida, because Star Yamaha had their training facility there. They bought Ricky Carmichael's farm, who was one of the top moto guys. And so Hayden, my son, ended up signing with Factory Yamaha for his pro career, which was a good move. He, obviously went on to win many races, many championships. And
he said, so he's won, just to recap, he's won motocross, supercross. He's won a number of big things.
Yeah.
So is he the number one in the world right now? Or?
Yeah, in the lights class.
Okay.
Yeah, so you have. It'd be like you have lights, which is a 250 motorcycle, 4-stroke. And then the main class above that's the 450 class. And that's where like the lights, when you graduate out of the lights class, you move to the 450 class.
Okay.
So as of right now, yes, he's in the lights class, and he's won the motocross and SMX, which is a super motocross championship. And he's racing supercross right now. So trying to win the Supercross championship. And, he's 18 years old, just turned 19. He's won 3 championships so far, which, it's pretty exciting. Yeah. He's definitely the kid to be in that class.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've become from Brian Deegan to Hayden's dad.
Oh yeah. No, I'm the dad figure now, which I could sit here and talk about all my, years of freestyle and racing and car racing and, yeah, it's awesome, but I feel like all that knowledge was good, and I carried over into coaching Haley and Hayden, and even Hudson. Hudson, my youngest, raced motocross, and he had a bad crash and ended up breaking his back. And that was for me, he was done. At that point, I'm like, dude, you're done. Fortunately, he didn't have a spinal cord injury, but it was very close. Yeah. And at that point, we put him into other, he rehabilitated, and he's into golf. He loves golf. So I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
I'm cool with that. But I was able to bring my racing experience into Haley's car racing career. My goal was to get her into NASCAR, and which we did. We got her into the NASCAR Truck Series. And then at that point, I was able to focus on Hayden's career and was able to, guide him into factory Yamaha deal and how to train and, put him around the best guys to be a champion.
And you said you're spending like every weekend right now.
Oh, yeah.
With Haley and Hayden.
Yeah.
Coaching them. And
yeah, I used to spend, the majority of my time with Haley at the NASCAR track. She was a young girl racing cars, which is a tough road to hoe. Like, it's very tough. And so we were able to get her into good teams and rolling. And now she's 23. So she's obviously, adult where she can handle her stuff. Right. And Hayden was 16, 17 when he started turning pro and getting into that world. And that's when I needed to focus on him, which they race 32 times a year in that series. It's crazy, the amount of racing. So I'm always gone. Every weekend we're gone. Every weekend we're at some different stadium, some different track. Yeah.
I'm interested in your wife, how she handles this. Cause I did 8 deployments to Afghanistan and which was, I'm fine with myself, but I never thought about my family side. And then my son, Hunter, becomes a Marine and gets deployed to Afghanistan. And I
You're nervous.
Oh man, it did. I mean, it put me in a really bad, dark place. Yeah. And I'm like, with my wife, I'm like, why are you not so bothered? And she's like, hey, well, welcome to my world. Like I've already done this. Like I'm a veteran at this side of it. And so like, is your wife like more nervous than you, or who's more nervous when it comes to your kid? Because she's been more seasoned as
it's a good question, and I feel like, because I've thought about this, like why are certain kids champions? What is it? What is the formula? And I've thought about it. Is it the parenting? Is it the programs they're in? Is it? And I feel like some kids are born with a certain instinct to win. I feel like certain kids are born with it.
Sure.
And because I've seen a lot of kids run through the same training programs as together. And why do some kids rise to the top? And so Hayden and my wife was against my kids riding dirt bikes. She was against it. Mm-hmm. So and I agreed with it. I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to risk that, and she was there in the hospital all the time with me, like so many days and weeks, and was at the hospital, and she's like, I'm not doing this with the kids. And I agreed. I said, I agree. Once you have your kids, you don't want to see them get hurt. You're like, yeah. So my kids we had dirt bikes at the house for fun. And then Hayden would just ride them around the yard and build his little jumps and just ride for fun. And then, and Haley, when I started racing cars and trucks, I raced the Pro Series, and they had a kids class at the Pro Series. So Haley just kept asking me, can I race the kids class? I'm like, and then finally Mom's like, get her a go-kart, like let her race. I'm like, she does arts and crafts. She will Grammy. She's not like that. She's not a racer. Yeah. And that was my opinion. And Mom was like, get her a car, like get her a cart. And so we eventually got her a little junkie cart, and she started racing the kids class. And then all of a sudden she started doing really good at it, and really good. And then I'm like, and the kids class got bigger into this bigger class. And I'm like, okay, she starts winning these races.
It's organically just happening.
Yeah, and she kind of earned her way. She kind of earned it. And I'm like, okay, now you get a better car. Now you get to the bigger class. And so winning. And finally I'm like, she's winning the bigger, the pro classes and stuff. And I'm like, she needs to get a shot. She needs to have a shot at this. Yeah. And that's when, and Mom was the driving force for Haley, 100%. Okay. Like Mom was her biggest, cheerleader, push it. And I feel like going back to how do you build champion kids, I feel like it helps if you have the wife on the same page, where she can't be the pillow to cry on, and that's what's been good about my wife. Like when my kids say crash or want to quit or not, basically trying to show weakness, she's tough. She's like, you're fine. Go get back in there. Like that's been her attitude the whole time. There's been times where like the kids, like one had a broken ankle and she's like, you're fine. You're like, go finish the race. And we find out later his ankle's broke. And so my point is she's pretty hardcore because she's been through it all with me, and so so that I feel like that helped me a ton, having her being tough, and then having Hayden come up in moto. I feel like he was not going to race. We took him. He kept asking because his friends would race, and he kept asking, take me to a race. I'm like, I ain't going back to the racetrack, dude. Like, you know, like I'm not going to the moto track. I haven't been to moto track in years. I walked away from moto when I did freestyle because I didn't get the factory ride. I had a bad taste in my mouth, and I was done with it. I didn't want to deal with moto. So I basically went back. I was like, I don't want to go back to the dirt bike scene, and because I felt like I didn't get my chance, and I had some weird like animosity about it, and so eventually he kept asking, and his friends were going to a race that weekend, and my wife's like, well, let's just take him to the little local race, and so we did, and he went out there and raced. I'm like, okay, he like really loved it. He was like, okay, this is fun, this, that. So we ended up taking him to like another couple local races. And then that's when I kind of figured out, I'm like, damn, dude, I don't know if I'm just a like excited dad, but he's rips on a dirt bike compared to these other kids his age. You know, I had no idea until you actually lined him up with other kids his age. I'm like,
contrast.
I'm like, dang, he's way fast. And so we started feeding a little more. Next thing you know, he starts winning these amateur nationals, and I'm like, okay, here we go. Like I was like just snowballed in. Unfortunately, Marisa was supportive of it, and I feel like the main thing with our kids was teaching them work ethic, teaching them how to work on the bikes, how to have, you know, basically work as an athlete for things, eat right, train, and have not quit, not give up. You know, and I think that was the good things for them that we're able to learn through sport. Yeah.
Through my life, you know, being an athlete myself, and then coaching my boys through wrestling and jiu-jitsu, and then I've been around different types of sports my whole life, and I've seen parents that have their motivations are sometimes healthy and sometimes they're bad. You're trying to live vicariously through their kids and push their kids. What advice would you have for a parent that is coaching an athlete or has an ambition for their kid to be successful as an athlete?
Yeah, I mean, I get
some good ones already, but
yeah, I just think you know, it's easy to become, in our sport, we call it the mini dad. The mini dad's like the mini bike dad who's just so like screaming and yelling and like, you know, throwing the tools. And we have a lot of those guys in the sport. And my dad was always like super mellow. Like when I race, hey, you did a good job. I'm like, Dad, I got like fifth, you know, like, and I always like was like, Dad, I'm like, when I didn't do good, I'd be like, Dad, why don't you ever get like aggro about this? You know, and I remember thinking that because my dad was super mellow when it came to sport, which in the end it was cool. I mean, I never got yelled at I had to put the pressure on myself. So, you know, with my kids, yes, I get excited but I try to let them, it's their time. I give them the guidelines and let them figure it out. Like I try not to live their sport, you know, and I try not to be the screaming crazy parent, you know, on the sidelines, you know, and there's been moments I've definitely been that guy for sure. But overall, I try not to be that. You say, I don't live, these parents that live vicariously through their kids. I think all of us live through our kids, dude. I think every parent does, right? I mean, if you really think about it, right? You
want better for them than you had yourself, and you want to see them out do you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You always want your kids to do better than you did, you know. But you always kind of live through their moments. But I try to step back and let them have their moments, and you know, just surround them with the right people. And I think that's the most important thing.
Back to that social pillar, right?
Yeah, and people come into our sport and they're asked, well, how should I get my kids good at the sport? I'm like, it's like any sport. You surround them with the best coaches and the best equipment. You know, I feel like that's your best shot at it. And and in our sport, because it's so dangerous, is technique is safety. You know, the more technique you have, the safer you're going to be. I think that probably carries over into a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, like, you know, we both do jiu-jitsu, and you know, where you're most likely to get hurt is by a white belt.
Yeah. I mean, I train
like 1,000 miles an hour. It looks like we're killing each other with other black belts all the time, and we never get hurt. Go with the brand new white belt and dang it.
Which I try to stay away from.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'm no weapons expert, but I'm sure like going down that path too. learning the techniques and how to do it correctly. You know, I feel like that just carries over into everything as far as, you know, safety, you know. So
for sure. So I mean, every successful athlete and successful person, especially when you spend your whole life committed to one thing, like you have, legacy is like super important.
Yeah.
What's the, you know, and legacy for yourself, for your family? Like what would you say, you know, if you had one thing that you could define your legacy to be, what would it be?
Yeah, you know, the legacy I feel like has changed over the years. I feel like at first it was just like, how many events can I win? How many, you know, medals? And that was the big thing. Like how many, you know, who had the most X Games medals? That was like, I remember when I was younger, that was like my mindset. But you know, I obviously now that I'm 50 years old, you know.
Do you have the most though?
I think so. Yeah. Yes, I think so.
Is it for you? Okay.
I don't know. I just try not to look at that. Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to interrupt you, but I had to ask.
Yeah, that's funny. But no, we have now legacy has to, you know, it has to be family, you know, it has to be, if someone was to look back, you know, what I would want them to think of me would be that dude was a good father. He was a good, husband. He was a good, you know, leader of his tribe, of his family. You know, that's what I'm striving for. Am I there? I don't know. You know, I still feel like I still have a lot of my old reputation that still, you know, hangs on, you know?
Yeah.
As far as a lot of the old things I did. And I get a lot of people are like, if you're a Christian, why do you still hang out with those guys? Or why do you still associate with those guys? I'm like, man, I just think of like, are you supposed to turn away from the sinners? Are you supposed to, you know, only hang out with, you know, I try to be the light.
Jesus had a pretty rough crew.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I don't like to compare. Exactly. So my point is, look who he hung out with. Yeah. And I think I know for a fact my walk has influenced many people, you know, in my industry, you know, as far as, you know, the militia vibe people or the militia like style vibe, which was the rebel guys that, you know, ride dirt bikes. You know, my walk is influenced a lot of those people. And I know, cause they've told me, you know, that I see it on social media. I see it, you know. I was
say, I was gonna validate that it has. I've observed it. And the way you carry yourself and you know things you're talking about right now, you live out. And, I mean, you can see the way your family, the results in your family, right? Like it's in your family. It's the way you interact with your kids, the way your wife interacts with you. I mean, that's the results there. Yeah. So I think you're living it out, man.
No, I appreciate it. And I mean, not nowhere near perfect, you know. Like it's a normal family, normal marriage. Like I have my teenage kids that we argue, you know, we battle the teenage vibe, you know, you know, do my kids are they perfect? No, you know, you know, are they, you know, we're all screw up all the time, you know? So I feel like it's though having that foundation to go back on, you know?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, you know, like I said, the life and lessons you've had, the resiliency that you've built, you're able to pass those on to your kids and those tools so they can be more resilient for the hard road they're going to have ahead. Life is hard. The sports they're involved in is hard. They're going to face a lot of difficult things, but you've been able to pass on a lot of those lessons. Last question I have for you, not related to anything with bikes, just does everybody has different levels of platforms. You have a huge platform. You got millions of people that follow you and you have a strong influence, but everyone has their own circle of influence. Everyone has some people that are looking to them. Yeah. You've used yours in the last few years to really be outspoken about your conservative values, about this country, about patriotism, and your values as a Christian. You've used it, especially with the political environment that's as tenacious as it's been, you know, between left, right, Republicans, Democrats, conservative, liberals. But you hadn't hid from that. You've been pretty outspoken about that. Why do you think it's important for people to speak what they believe to be true and use that platform for influence and culture?
Yeah, I think especially now, I feel like the reins have loosened up a little bit as far as being able to say what you believe in. Yeah. You know, I've been saying what I believe in for years.
Yeah.
And I've had the repercussions of it. I've gotten shadow banned many times on our social media, which affects us financially. That's like right. At the end of the day, like they know what they're doing. They know how to like maneuver you, for the people that don't want to say what they don't want people to hear. Right. For me, I have platforms, on, say Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, our YouTube channel, the Deegans, the family channels. It's a 1.4 million subscribers now. For Moto, that's a very large base. And I say we use it, and there's been it's a lot of work, right? We do 3 videos a week. We do, posts every day. It's a lot of work. And I'm like, a lot of times I'm like I live with my filmer guys, like, and they're good dudes. And but it's, you give up your privacy. Sure. Like, think about always having a dude in the car with you always. Like, and you're trying to like talk to your wife on the phone about something. You're trying, and the best thing, like I told them, the best thing you guys can do is just be like, you never hear anything. It's just like comes in 1 ear, goes out the other, right? So my point is with the social media, I've thought about many times giving up, like just going, you know what, I'm just going to focus on my health, training, my kids. And then I thought, you know what? We've built such a platform and have such a message. And I tell people we stand for faith, family, freedom. And that's what we stand for. And I feel like that rubbed people wrong 3 or 4 years ago, rubbed a lot of people wrong. I'm like, why does that rub you wrong, dude? And then these are my channels. You don't have to follow. You don't have to subscribe. Like I'm not asking that. Yeah. And then people, I remember I would have battles with these liberal media guys, liberal moto media guys and I'd be like, you guys are mad because I have a voice. And I go, and I'm able to share what I believe in. And I go, and we've worked hard to build that. And I feel like that's important to me. And that's why we continue to do it, and it's a business. Yes, the sponsors like the reach and all this, but I'm like, my sponsors support and believe in me for what we believe in, and I partner with those types of people. And I think it's important if you have a voice, even if, like you said, everyone has a voice, and you shouldn't be scared to stand for what you believe in. And I go, and if that gets you in trouble, well, then so be it, right? I'm saying, and the tides will turn. And I told people that years ago when I was posting about Trump and posting, we met him at the NASCAR race with my daughter. Fortunately, I was fortunate enough to meet him personally through my daughter at NASCAR when he came there to Daytona 500 years ago. When he was
flyover and
did the flyover, came in, the first lap, and literally walked up, and I think Don Jr. was there, and I got to talk to him for a while, and he was talking to Haley for a while. And genuinely, when you can tell if someone's a good guy or not, like as a man, you get kind of a vibe of like, okay, is this dude real or is he not? And I felt like talking to him, I was like, dude, this guy seems like everything I see is just the real deal. Yeah. Like this dude
is not a politician.
He's not a politician. Yeah. He's a dude that doesn't need to be here, doesn't need to be doing this. Mm-hmm. I think he truly has God's favor, and I truly think he is here to correct the wrongs in this country. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know, I'm like, can this dude get it done in 4 years? Is that enough time? But the way, trust me, I have the same thoughts and concerns. Yeah. A lot. Yeah, a lot. But so what happens when all that unfolds, right? So, and I think of all these, what are the repercussions of all this is happening? And, how's this going to play out? How do you keep it this way? How do you keep, all these things? I trust me, I have all these thoughts as you do, as many men do, because all you want is a good life for your kids and family. And you don't want to be robbed. You don't want to be robbed on taxes. You don't want to be, if you're going to give up money out of your paycheck, you want to know where it's going. You want to make sure it's going to good causes and helping people. And from what you see now, you're just like, really? Is this like really where it's headed? And then you think, man, are these people gonna get punished for this? Like, it has
to be justice, right?
There has to be justice somewhere. And I have all those thoughts. And then also, I've been fortunate enough to have a good career and, make money through our careers and business. And if I wanted to, like, we'd go buy a farm and go shut the gate, right? And we could live that life. But I don't feel like that's not the right move. I feel like I stood for this for years, right? And as you have. Mm-hmm. And I said, there will come a day where the balance is going to come. You know, they had us so far left leaning for so much time because they had all that money going into the media machine.
They're paying. We were paying for opposition.
Yes. And so you're constantly getting hammered and hammered and hammered. It makes you start believing, like, am I the only one left that's conservative? Like, you really start getting those thoughts, you know, because of the media machine pounding you.
Even they made the word conservative sound like a bad word.
Yes, you can't even say it, or even like fly your flag. Like, I mean, like, just that's how crazy it was getting. I mean, even down to the point of where they make it odd to shake another guy's hand now, right? Because of the freaking their pandemic crap they pulled, right? So I have a lot of the same thoughts of many men, right? And at the end, you just want to have an honest country, honest like shot at, you know, earning an honest wage and not having it taken from you. You know, and raising your kids in a good country. My focus is, I'm 50, so how many more years will I be around? I don't know. You know, my kids, I'm care about my kids and what their future is. That's what I care about, you know? So, I mean, I love what's going on with the country. I have to feel like I believed it was going to happen years ago. I go, there's no way this unbalance can stay. No. And they, you know, and they're distracting us so bad with so many weird things that you're like, you know, with the so many weird policies that you're like, no way, what's that your attention's over here while they're robbing you over here. And I'm like, okay, that's done. You know what I'm saying?
It's exposed.
It's exposed. So what happens now that it's exposed, right? That's the next question, right? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, as we sit here right now, and it is just obviously not live, so those they'll be hearing this in delay. But Kash Patel is being, you know, the Senate hearings taking place for Kash Patel. He's a very key factor in the justice side of what's going to happen. Him and Pam Bondi, you know, working together as director of FBI and the you know, in the Department of Justice as the Attorney General. Like, I mean, I do think if there have been crimes committed, and we know they have been, that people will be held accountable. And I'm hopeful for that anyways. But on the social media side, man, I always like, because I went through it too. So I always like am proud to sit across from people who financially took a hit, knowing that by speaking out, they're going to suppress your channel. You're going to lose money. You could potentially even lose your business. I know people that have lost their businesses over the suppression, but stayed the course anyway. And now something that I never thought we would see, and I don't know the motivation behind it, but we see Mark Zuckerberg. By the way, I think Zuckerberg changed the social circle. He started doing jiu-jitsu, being around the UFC, Dana White and all those guys, Mick Maynard, who's been a guest on the show, the vice president of the UFC, and had a little testosterone injected in himself. And he just totally has flipped. And now all of a sudden, but there's still holdovers in Meta, because I've been dealing with them.
It's not clear yet.
Still those who are there, they're the resistance, and they're still going to. We got suppressed last week.
Really?
Oh yeah, for posting the picture. You know, we know Tulsi and did a congratulations post for Tulsi Gabbard for being director of intelligence, and we posted a picture of her with a gun. And they suppressed it, locked our account on for non-followers, and I'm like, still,
they're still in there. They're still in there.
Get rid of these people.
And that's why I did that post about with Zuckerberg, like doing his speech of like, I know we're going to be about free speech now, and
you and I were commenting back and forth on that,
And I did that post not because I'm a pro Zuck fan. It's just me to show people like, hey, the tides are turning. Is this guy fully on our side? I don't know about that. And I remember when he first started doing jiu-jitsu, I commented under the deal. I said, jiu-jitsu is going to save the world. My point is, it's going to change him. You can't do it without changing. You can't go in there to jiu-jitsu and not come out different.
Regardless of his motivation, I always try to give people credit where credit's due and have grace for people. And it's like, man, I would have hoped he's seen the light. And if he saw the light and has changed, then good for him. And good for everyone else, by the way.
And I feel like he has, and you could think too, oh, well, he's just playing along with the game because it's a different political climate. But really, I think the men he's been hanging around have influenced him.
Well, he put Dana White on his board and Meta.
Really?
Which is great. Dana White's on the board of Meta.
Oh, perfect.
I mean, Dana White's like, he's if anybody's about free speech, Dana White says whatever he wants, and no one's gonna tell him not to. So
I think you say it's gonna take some time. I think you give it some time before they probably clear out the people that's still suppressing people's speech, which still blows me away in America. That's like a thing, you know, that like we're still fighting that you can't stand for your country, or I mean, you're legally allowed to own firearms. Like, why is it a problem? Why is it a problem to post a gun and talk about a gun? It's so crazy to me that they've turned that into like a evil, like demonized it, you know? It's just, I don't know. I was going to ask you too, like when you're doing your fights, like the nerves of going into a fight and is that like, do you get the same type of nerves going into combat? Like,
yeah, it's funny. It's a really good question. A lot of people have asked that before. And not only myself, I've talked to other guys who have done both MMA and combat. And actually MMA, the nerves were worse. I think in combat, you're feel like you have an advantage. Now there's been times because of the type of job I had as a singleton operator, like working by myself, you know, behind enemy lines and Taliban occupied territory, that I'm by myself, no radio, me and Afghan teammate Aziz, and you know, we have one weapon, you know, a couple of magazines extra, or unarmed. I've been unarmed in Taliban villages and in Pakistan and stuff like that. But you kind of create this composure of being comfortable in that environment. But there's something about like when I make the walk in that MMA cage that I know that it's a very equal playing field. The advantage is not there, and combat is imminent. It's going to happen. Like and this guy's a professional athlete that's been training 3 months to beat me. And so really like I feel like, and more so in that environment, I had to control my emotions very like. And I always walked in the ring like super composed. In fact, I think it's probably my best attribute as a competitor, because I've beat people that are way better than me. I've outstruck people that are better strikers than me. I've outgrappled people that are better grapplers than me. And I think it was because of the composure. But I've always was very intentional about making sure like I cannot let my emotions, fear get ahead of me. Because once that, then you start deteriorating in your skill and your capability. And so I'm like okay in the gym, but I always felt like I was an incredible competitor. Like because of composure. But man, it starts like days out. Like for me, like it starts at the weight. I get it first. I would get it first when the promoter would call me, tell me who the opponent's going to be, and I have to sign a contract. Like I'd have that wave of like pressure, like anxiety. But then I'll get that and I build myself up to be super confident. Like I'm going to crush this guy, like one other opponent. He's my weight. As a, you know, I just had this huge composure. But then at weigh-ins, it would come back and I would get it back under control. And now like it's fight day, you wake up and like I said, that clock's ticking and you're getting closer, and just having to keep that composure down. And but once I get in there, and as soon as the referee said like fight, I never felt any like completely like emotionless. Like just present, like completely emotionless. And it was really weird. I'm sure similar to like preparing for like, I don't know anything about motorcycle riding or freestyle riding, but I'm sure you have like sometimes you probably, you know, freestyle and don't have a plan, but a lot of times you probably have a plan, you scripted and you drilled it, like rehearsed. Like I always had really good coaches and it always game plan everything. And when I was fighting this guy, Joe Sandoval in Legacy FC. Joe had just came out of UFC. So he's a UFC fighter, you know, top, you know, one of the top level bantamweights. And you know, I had trained with Randy Couture for that fight, and Randy Couture and Brad Anderson like really like game plan that fight. And like from the moment of touching gloves to like the way I would circle to the first me striking first, because he was a way better striker than me, and putting him on his heels and trying to get him to where I could take him down, get him to certain, like controlling the ring, get him a certain section. And I remember we drilled that like over and over and over and over again. And then as soon as we like touched gloves and I started moving that direction, and I was like, I remember thinking in my mind, like, I've been here 1,000 times before. This is working exactly what's supposed to happen. And everything just went like, I wanted to fight in 58 seconds. Yeah. But it was almost like a drill that was like executed. And sometimes things go wrong and you have to shift and adjust. But like, it was like, that was the one moment, like everything felt like I had been there 1,000 times before. And it's like, as soon as you get in that moment, it's the comfort level.
So preparation,
You don't hear anybody outside the ring. Like, there's no pressure. Like, and it's, and as soon as the fight's over, like everything kind of floods back.
Yeah, I was wondering that. I mean, I was wondering that because you, like you said, you're going down there, you're like, I'm fighting someone. The fight's happening for sure. Like, you know what I'm saying? So you're like, no matter what, I'm going in. And so no, I get what you're saying there. That's
gotta be the same sitting on a ramp, right? Like when they say go, and that bike goes down,
like I'm flipping this dirt bike, for sure. You know, like it's happening.
And you know, like you said, my hand could be raised, or I could be getting carried out on a stretcher. I could wake up like,
just don't know.
Why are you guys in my house? Why are 50,000 people? Or 10,000 people and children are like sitting in my house. So, oh no, I just got knocked out. Like, you know that can happen.
Yeah. Have you been knocked out in fights?
No. I've lost twice. I won 18. I was 18-2 as a pro. All my 17 wins, submission, one decision, and I lost once on a stoppage in the third round, Bellator main event against Zach Makovsky, who was champion in Bellator, and then the next fight I fought a guy named Jonathan Mackles, and he did knock me out, but I kept fighting and I didn't remember anything. I got up, took him down twice, and then that second takedown, he caught a choke, and when I woke up, I was tapping, and I was dreaming I was drowning. And so when I guess I had tapped, I didn't know I tapped, and I had no idea what happened, and so I fell back against the fence and thought I was safe to get up, and because I knew I couldn't get kneed, but he kneed me with his quad, which was legal. And I actually ended up protesting it. But when I seen the video, I was like, oh, he legitimately got me. But I didn't even know I got up and took him down twice. So I was out the whole time, but it wasn't considered a KO.
I strung your bell.
It was a submission.
Interesting.
Crazy experience. Honestly, like talking about getting nervous, probably the more nervous I get is jiu-jitsu tournaments. I don't know why. Like, I mean, it's safer, right? But and you and I were talking about this before the show. I'm never nervous about getting hurt. I'm nervous about losing. I don't want to lose. Like, I think I said this earlier. Like, I hate losing more than I love winning.
And that's exactly what Hayden says. My son racing. He practices with the team, probably about 10 guys during the week, all these other pros on his team. And sometimes he'll be like the third fastest, fifth fastest. They scrimmage during the week. You know, he'll be like third, fifth, whatever. He'll go to the race and just destroy everyone at the race. And people are just like, how does he do that? I go, game time, he shows up.
It's just how I am as a competitor.
It's just a game time.
Now, so I say that like I'm still that guy, but I'm not.
I know. It's certain people rise to the occasion when it's game time, you know. And Hayden has that attribute, and so anyway, I get what you're saying. Like, 'cause some guys rise when it becomes difficult, you know. So
I would never keep me up at night if I like got hurt or injured or broke a bone. But if I lost something, like I'll be up like for years.
It's trying to figure out what happened. And then in jiu-jitsu tournaments, losses come more quicker, often, right? It's just you're doing tons of matches.
You're doing it's tournament style, and I haven't competed in a couple of years. I've won everything that I needed to win. I'm content as a competitor. But I'll compete still every now and then because I like it. And because of my international stuff, I've been doing a lot of humanitarian operations in the last few years. Hopefully that calms down that President Trump gets control of the world and it's not burning down anymore. But so I hadn't competed in a couple of years, but this year, I'm 49 this year, I turned 50. And so I have a 50-year competition goal. I'll say it here. I never said it publicly before, but all my team knows it. Like at 50, I want to do a super fight against an adult black belt. Like under the adult rules, adult meaning like 18 to 29 years old age range. So I want to do that at 50 to represent the old guys and against a decent like brand new black belt.
A jiu-jitsu tournament?
not a tournament. Like they have these pro jiu-jitsu super fights.
Okay.
So see if one of the young guys or one of the young new black belts will compete against the old guy, and at their rules, their rule set, the time limits and stuff like that. So that's like my 50-year-old competition goal. I've had it for years.
Okay.
So
good. You stick to it, and it's good. Like for me, I work good at setting. I'm going to do this event, and then it gives me something to train for. Man, I've always said that. Like if I am the hardest working lazy person I know, because like I will like work so hard for something, and then the competition's like over, and now I'm like too lazy to go get vitamins. The next day, oh, I don't have anything on the calendar. So I have to have something on the calendar. Goal driven. That's how men are, you know? So, yeah. Cool, man. Right on. Well, hey, it's great having you on. And we have some amazing sponsors that love supporting this show. Yeah. And so we're going to take you out and shoot some Smith & Wesson with some Vortex optics. And I know you said you had a particular gun that you wanted. And so this is actually mine. This is the Smith & Wesson Equalizer, and with a Vortex Defender optic. And so this gun, particularly, is the one I carry every day, and have a light on it. It has a mount for a light. It has the Vortex optic. It's pre-cut for an optic, and it has a safety on the back hand strap that I like a lot for concealed carry because it's not going to get, you're not going to snag it, sticking if you're appendix carry, you could actually put your hand here and slide it into your waistband. So this is mine, but if this is the gun you want, we're going to get, Smith & Wesson's going to get one out to you, and we'll put a Vortex on it. And it's 15+1, so good round capacity. Oh, perfect. We got some other options as well, but we're going to get out to the range and see what you like best. But I think you'll like this one. I'm excited. Yeah. Excited. It's one of the reasons why I came. Yeah, we're gonna get some good shooting in. We'll get some good content too. So your channel, we can put some of that shooting content on your channel, and we'll have it on our Patreon as well. And so we'll have a blast. Ah, cool. Yeah. Right on. And then we have let me take this out here. BioPro is a supplement company. I know you still take care of yourself, work out. That's actually a super amazing product. They have daytime and nighttime. It's a human growth hormone, like all natural. In fact, the UFC gyms just started carrying it. Really? And it's USADA approved, and it's really safe because it's like it's kind of Eastern medicine. Comes off of deer antler. Comes off of deer antlers. Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah. So it's kind of like more Eastern medicine with a cool Americanized modern day patch, but it's been a package, but it's been around for quite some time. Huh, that's cool. And it's super effective. Is it like a drink? Yeah, you shake it up and you hold it in your tongue for like 30 seconds. The nighttime one took me from like, I say this all the time because it's a real significant thing for me. Like 4 hours sleep a night to 9 hours sleep a night. Really? Sleep's super important, man. And so it actually was making me sleep just. And it's in my recovery, all the guys I know that take it, especially a lot of jiu-jitsu guys start to take it, a lot of UFC fighters are, the recovery side is like super. And cognitive too. I always heard people talk about cognitive stuff, and I'm like, that's not real. And then I was taking this and I stopped taking it, and I felt like foggy. And I wonder if it's because of that stuff. And I started taking it again, man. It brought some clarity back to me. Good. And then one more sponsor I want to mention. That you may or may not be interested in. You mentioned Tony Hawk earlier. Yeah. So Tony Hawk and I serve on a board together for the athletes and military guys for Bio Accelerator, so stem cell company down in Medellin, Colombia. Actually, the company's out of Scottsdale, Arizona. Okay. The clinic's down in Medellin, and they UFC fighters go down there and get stem cell treatment. Yeah. It's way different than they do here in the States, and it's phenomenal. I've been down there. I'm actually going next month for another round. Yeah. It's super good. So all your banged up injuries and stuff like that, I know they'd love to have you down and take care of you. Oh, that'd be awesome. Medellin's an awesome trip. I would love it. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah. And maybe some other time too, when you guys I don't know, we could touch on the subject too. I think of like Ibogaine and stuff like that. Yeah. Because I think that even like with the moto guys, I think it would even help a lot of the moto guys who struggle with, you know, with addictions and different things, and just athletes that I know. I don't know. I think that I just like to learn more about that. I was super closed off when it first came out. I was worried about like spiritual implications, and I've learned more about it. And I will not say I'm totally sold now, but I know some guys that have personally
had Ibogaine experiences that have had, I know that they couldn't stop drinking before, and they went and had this one round of Ibogaine, and then they're not drinking anymore. And I know guys that have really turned their life around. So I'm a lot of guys in the veteran space. So it's worked for a lot of people, and guys that are banged up. So I know some folks that I could put you in touch with if you're interested on that side.
It's like I think it's an interesting topic. So,
it is. Yeah. It's emerging fast, and Morgan Luttrell, who's Marcus Luttrell and Morgan, they're twins. Morgan Luttrell is a congressman. He's actually a congressman here and a friend of mine, and he's really been an advocate for microdosing the psychedelics at the VA for PTSD and stuff like that.
Yeah, so. I listened to that. I listened to the podcast on it, and it sounds like the Texas governor is supporting it or trying to get it passed. Yeah, to support research and go down that path, which I think it's great. You got to
figure out what every method you can to help people. And like I said, I at first when it first came out, I took some pretty strong stances against it, but then I've kind of listened to some people that through personal testimony, and it seems like it's helped a lot of people. So I'm in a phase right now to where I'm not sold, but I'm exploring and opening my mind to hearing what it's about, what it has to say, and super interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the stem cell stuff, man. I really hope that with RFK that we get it here in the States, and these guys at BioAccelerator are awesome. Like I said, Tony Hawk's a big proponent of it. He probably didn't have a lot of time to spare and give up, but for him to give up his time and participate on the board there, it says a lot for athletes.
Yeah, I'm definitely down to. My body hurts. There's certain days my body hurts so bad. Like I have a lot of good days, but I have a lot of bad days too. Just as far as pain. So
yeah, right on. Well, as we wrap out, where I mean, obviously people could follow you on your Instagram. What do you want to point people to most? Your YouTube channel, or
I would say YouTube. The Deegans is our main YouTube channel. We have another YouTube channel called Deegans Unleashed, which is our smaller channel that we just do more fun, goofy stuff on. But the Deegans YouTube, and then my Instagram, and everything's just Brian Deegan 38. Then the kids, Danger Boys, is Hayden, Danger Boy Deegan, and Hudson Deegan, but we nickname him Huckson. So his social media is Huckson. I mean, everything's got to be branded, I guess.
Yeah. And your daughter?
Haley. Yeah, so Haley Deegan. Deegan. Hers is just Haley. So
man, my three oldest, we did all H's too. Hunter, Haley, Hayden.
That's funny.
So
that was my wife's she just wanted it all H's. So that's cool with it.
That's cool. I didn't know that till prep for this.
Yeah. Right on,
brother. Yeah, cool. Well, thanks, man.
Yeah,
let's go out and do some shooting.
Yeah, I know.
Hey guys, if you have not yet, follow, comment, subscribe. Subscribe also to Brian's channel, Deegan, the Deegan family. Did I get it right?
The Deegans,
the Deegans. And if you're not yet following our Patreon, get on our Patreon because we have tons of behind the scenes content on it. In fact, today we're gonna capture some really good stuff of out on the range shooting. So follow us on Patreon, and we'll see you next week. Stay resilient. Hey, what's up, Resilient family? I am so grateful for each of you who tune in every week to hear our episodes. We have such incredible guests and topics that I am passionate about, our team's passionate about, and we could not do it without you. So we're thankful for you. We love you. We appreciate you locking arms with us to be more informed, to become a more resilient community. And I want to invite you to become a tighter part of that community by joining us on Patreon. If you go to our show notes below, you can click the link and get dialed into our Patreon and get extra content weekly. You could join for $15 a month and get behind the scenes footage, get closer access to me. I have monthly Zooms that I'll be doing with some members of the community. And so we'd love to get more involved. Again, go below in the show notes and click the link and join today.